we are bringing some tips that are really going to save you thousands. Literally, in this episode, we're going to talk about how you can save tens of thousands of dollars. Unless you are rich and you have a whole lot of money to be able to put down on down payment and closing costs to purchase a home, then you are going to need to know this one thing that we're going to be talking about in this episode in order to help you make that purchase. And no, it's not down payment assistance. If you missed the down payment assistance, you're going to have to catch the last week's home finance hacks when we get that one posted, which will be in a couple of days. But in any case, it's not down payment assistance, but please do go back and watch last week's as soon as we get that one posted on down payment assistance, because we talked about a ton of good information that is really going to help you prepare and plan when you're utilizing that down payment assistance. But down payment assistance is not going to cover everything. So what we're talking about in this episode is what's going to help you bridge the gap between how much money you have and how much money you need in order to be able to get that home that you're wanting to buy. So let's dive on into it. We are talking about seller contributions to closing costs. Yes, seller concessions, seller contributions, they're both the same thing. The seller's giving you money to help you purchase that home. So when we get into talking about seller contributions, there's a couple different ways that you can actually get that money from the seller. One of those ways is by negotiating it through the sales contract. So if you were to negotiate with the seller, or rather your agent, your real estate agent, were to negotiate with the listing agent on your behalf to try and get terms that are going to help you be able to purchase the home that you want, then through that negotiation, that is one way that the seller can actually get you money to help you purchase that home. So maybe the seller is in a situation where they need to sell really quickly. Maybe the seller has a home that, you know what, they are really only caring about netting a certain amount of money from the home. Let's say that they have a home that they're selling for $400,000, but the seller's fine with letting it go for $385,000. Maybe the seller's willing to give you $15,000 in seller contributions toward closing to help you purchase that home, and they still get the $385,000 that they want. Now, you're not really gonna know what the seller's situation is unless their real estate agent kind of shows their hand, but you're not really going to know in most cases what the situation is with the seller. Now, there are some situations in which you can have a little bit more of, a peek behind maybe the wiggle room you'll have to negotiate. For example, let's say that there's a home that's been listed for several days, not several days, let's say a couple months, 60 days even. And that ends up opening up an opportunity because you have a seller who wants to sell, but their home is not really selling that quickly. And so maybe there's a little bit of room in there for you to be able to get in and negotiate for the seller to kick in some seller contributions, and then, they can get their home sold. That's one way that you might be able to find a property where the seller might be a little bit more willing to negotiate for that. But in any case, that's one way that you can get the money that you need to be able to help cover down payment or closing costs. The seller can't pay for your down payment, but you can use that money to help cover your closing costs. So one way is, again, negotiating. Another way, if you have a seller that's not willing to negotiate, is to add to the sales price of the home. So if you add to the sales price of the home, this is what that's gonna look like. You have a seller that is selling a home for $400,000. You want to buy their property, but you need the seller to kick in about $15,000 that you don't have so that you can afford the closing costs to be able to purchase their home. So this is what that's going to look like. If you were to go to the seller, you negotiate, you try to say, hey, I need, $15,000. Seller says, no, I can't get you $15,000. They don't want to move off of that $400,000 purchase price. Another thing you can do is increase the price of the home. So what that looks like is you have that $400,000 home and you go to the seller and say, hey, I will pay you $415,000 for that home, and you give me $15,000 in closing costs. And so that's how that looks. And the seller still gets the $400,000 that they want to sell the home for, and you get the $15,000 you need. So essentially that $15,000 is being financed into the home. So as long as, and this is the caveat with using this method, the home must appraise for the higher value. So if you're gonna purchase that home for $415,000 and have the seller give you $15,000 back, even though the seller's still only getting the 400 because they're giving you 15, that home still needs to appraise for the whole 415,000 because that's the amount that the lender is going to be basing their loan off of. They're basing the loan off of that $415,000. So the home needs to appraise for that $415,000. That's the caveat. So this will get you, in some cases it might get you an extra $5,000, maybe an extra $10,000 if the home will appraise for an extra $10,000. If it'll get you an extra $15,000 or $20,000, then that seller may have had a real estate agent that probably should have had a pre-listing appraisal done instead of just doing a comparative market analysis, because they left some money on the table if that home comes up and just appraises for $25,000, $30,000 above asking price. But in any case, it's happened before. But that's another way that you can get money from the seller. If you have a seller that doesn't want to negotiate, you can still get that money you need. Another thing that I will say before I move on to the next thing that I'm gonna say is that you do have some sellers that if they're going to give you that $15,000, they will also state in the contract that they don't want you to, that you agree basically that if this home only appraises for 400. So let's take our same example. You want to purchase it for 415 and have the seller give you 15 back. The seller may agree to that, but they also may put a stipulation in there that says if this home only appraises for 400, I'm not giving you anything. So the seller says, I'm not giving you any money if this home only appraises for 400, or they're only going to give you the amount above 400 as seller contributions to closing, essentially. So that's something that the seller might put in there. Again, they're wanting to protect themselves, because if the home only appraised for 400, the seller doesn't want to give you $15,000, because now that means they're only getting 385 and they wanted the 400 to begin with. Hopefully you're tracking with me, but if not, this is recorded. When we get this recording posted, make sure you go back and you watch the replays. So in any case, those are the main two ways that you can get seller contributions for the seller to contribute to closing costs. Now, moving on from there, how do you use these contributions? This is the important thing right here. And I'm going to start from the least effective way to use it and end with the most effective way that you can utilize these seller contributions. Now, the least effective way is reduction. Well, really the least effective way is for the seller to pay your closing costs. That tends to be the most utilized way for most people to use the seller contributions to closing. But I'm gonna explain to you why the seller paying for your closing costs is actually the least effective way for you to use seller contributions. The reason is because closing costs do nothing to affect how much your monthly mortgage payment is. Now, if you don't have the money for the closing cost, then you absolutely want to use that money so you can at least purchase the home, because your options are don't purchase the home because you don't have the money for closing costs, or purchase the home and pay a little bit more for your monthly payment. However, closing costs do nothing to affect how much your monthly mortgage payments are, how much those monthly costs are every month throughout the remainder of that mortgage. And so because of that, most people don't realize that this is the least effective way for you to utilize seller contributions, but it's the most utilized way because, again, purchasing a home is expensive and a lot of people don't have the money. So I will say, if you can, start now saving up money for your own closing costs so that when you get the seller contributions, you can do what I'm going to talk about last. And that was going to really save you hundreds of dollars a month. So stay tuned. We're going to get into that in just a minute. But the next way that you can utilize seller contributions to closing is just a simple price reduction. So let's say that that seller, taking our same example, wants to sell their home for $400,000. They agree, let's say that they do agree to give you $15,000 to put toward closing costs. They agree to give you $15,000 to put toward closing costs. Now, what you could do is say, hey, I've got money for closing costs. I want you to take that $15,000 and let's reduce the price of the house, and I'll purchase the house for $385,000. So that's a price reduction, and that $15,000 less on the principal balance of the loan is going to lower your monthly mortgage payment by a little bit, a very little bit, not much at all. So again, this is not a hugely effective way, but it will buy you maybe that extra 10,000, 15,000 may buy you an extra, we'll say $60 maybe. And that's obviously going to depend upon the interest rate that you're getting and everything as well. But we'll say maybe that saves you an extra $50 on your mortgage payment, an extra $60 on your monthly mortgage payment by dropping it that $15,000. Maybe it saves you $70, $75 on your mortgage payment, based on the interest rate you're getting and everything. So that's what you're saving by paying $15,000 less for the house. Now, if you were to say, hey, that $15,000 that the seller's willing to give me, I've already got money to pay my closing costs, so I don't want to put it toward closing costs. I don't want to take a price reduction. What I want to do is I want to do a interest rate buy down. And what that does is it decreases your interest rate from whatever the interest rate that you were getting to maybe 0.5% less, maybe a whole percent less. And that 0.5% that you're decreasing your interest rate could save you $100, $115 on your monthly mortgage payment. If you are able to put that $15,000 toward decreasing your interest rate a whole percentage point, meaning 1%, just 1% could save you $200, $220 a month on your monthly mortgage payment. So instead of having that monthly mortgage payment that's, let's just say $3,000, now you're looking at a monthly mortgage payment that's $2,800 or $2,780 a month. And that, what could you do with an extra $220 a month that you don't have to pay to a lender on your mortgage payment? And instead you can utilize that to buy groceries, or you can utilize that to put gas in your car. You can utilize that to treat yourself once a month, going out to dinner. Maybe you take your wife on a date night and you can have that $220 that you now saved from utilizing this strategy that I'm telling you here to enjoy a date night once a month with your wife. And how does that affect the quality of your life? If you're married, you know what I'm talking about. In any case, that is the most effective way that you can utilize seller contributions. It's not the most utilized way because most people just put the seller's money toward paying closing costs because the cost of purchasing a home is so expensive. But again, do the hard work now. Save up your money so that you can put your money to paying closing costs. That way, when you get money from the seller, you can put the seller's money toward buying down your interest rate. Don't worry about, oh, you're going to have to come out of pocket and spend your money on closing costs, because when you're saving $200, $300 a month, you're going to get that money back. All that money that you put, that $10,000 or $15,000, $12,000, whatever it is you spent on closing costs, you're going to get all of that money back over the next couple years. Because let's do the math here. If you've got let's say you save $200 a month on your mortgage payment with having the seller buy down your interest rate. In 1 year, that's $2,400. In 2 years, that's $4,800. So in 4 years, you're looking at, what's that, $9,600. You're almost at $10,000 in less than 5 years that you have already saved up just by reducing your mortgage payment. But you got a 30-year loan here. You're going to be in this thing more than 5 years. You might be in this loan more than 7 years or 10 years. So you're talking about, yes, over the next 5, 7, 8 years, you've made back that $12,000, that $15,000 that you paid in closing costs. And then everything after that is just icing on the cake, because now you're still making, long after you've made your money back, hopefully you're still owning this home, because having it as a long-term investment is going to benefit you a lot more than just having it for a short period of time and trying to flip it for a profit. Keep this home as a long-term thing. Even if you don't want to live in it, rent it out to someone else who's going to pay the mortgage payment, but you keep it so that as the home continues to appreciate and get higher in value, you are benefiting from growing your wealth because of that appreciation. In any case, this is something that is going to help you out, because long after you have already recouped the money that you spent on the closing cost, you're still going to be saving $200, $300 a month. And actually, you're going to even be saving more than that, because a bigger portion of each month's mortgage payment goes toward principal the longer that you have this loan, meaning that every month that you pay, a little bit more goes toward principal, a little bit more goes toward principal, until you get a little over halfway through with this loan, maybe 2/3 of the way through with this loan, and it flips, and now you're paying mostly principal. But in any case, this is where you want to focus on trying to get to, because it's going to give you the most bang for your buck. Save up your money now so that you can pay your own closing costs, and you can use down payment assistance for the down payment if you need it. So I'm not saying you have to pay down payment and closing costs. You can use down payment assistance for the down payment. Again, listen to the last week's episode so that you can get all the details on the down payment assistance, but you can use down payment assistance for the down payment portion. Use your own money to pay the closing cost, and use the seller's money to buy down your interest rate. And that is the win-win-win, because now you've got that interest rate bought down, which is going to save you $200, $300 or more dollars per month. You're going to recoup back your closing cost, and everything after that is just icing on the cake, and you're just saving it up. So this is the game changer. This is what you need to do if you really want to win big in the housing market. Negotiate for seller contributions. So talk to your real estate agent, talk to a lender. They can give you some tips on houses to look for, things to look for in, how long it's been on the market, the condition of the home, some things that you might be able to do to negotiate for the seller to contribute to those closing costs, and you're off to the races and getting what you need so that you can purchase that home and start saving those hundreds of dollars. Is really going to expedite your journey into wealth through home ownership. That's what I have for you. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. Tune in on Fridays as well, because we drop another episode of the Greatest Asset Community Podcast. I'm excited about what's going to be on this episode. We're actually picking up from what we started last week as well. So listen to last week's episode and then tune in this Friday when we drop our next episode of that. But that's what I have for you. Thank you for taking the time. Make sure you're back here on Tuesday, 7 p.m. We're live, 7 p.m. Eastern time every Tuesday. I look forward to seeing you. Till next time, take care, be blessed, and we'll see you next week.